Hello everybody. I haven't been active here on this Facebook Live for a while, and I thought I would come here to show my face and show you where I am. I'm here at the Tiny House Warriors. You can still see the tiny houses behind me. And we're here at this area in Blue River, which is really important to us. We've been here since time immemorial. Our people, our Secwepemc people, but more recently, myself and my family, my mother, my twin sister, and my other younger sister, Snutetgwa, we moved out here. We moved out into our territory, off of the Indian Reserve, off of the concentration camp, and back out onto our territory here at Blue River. And this was the site where we moved these tiny houses to, because it was an area that was being plotted for a 1,000-man man camp for the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So these would be pipeline workers to come in, and we've been here now. It's going to go on now for 4 years. In July next month will be 4 years that we've been living here. In this beautiful part of our territory where the snow-capped mountains and the glaciers are year-round, and these glaciers are constantly feeding our rivers. And we're freedom fighters. We're here for our territory. We're here for our Secwepemc rights and our title to our land. And it's a generational fight. My grandfather, Dr. Grand Chief George Manuel, was involved in the fight for our lands, our title and rights, and also my father. And they both are authors of books. My grandfather wrote The Fourth World, and my father, he wrote 2 books, Unsettling Canada and Reconciliation Manifesto. And myself, I'm starting to write my book as well. So we have a lot of our family history that is written in these words, in these pages, and it's actually really teaches a lot to the world. And we're actually even gonna discussing about calling one of the books the Manual, and our Manuel family has been instrumental in standing up for us to where we are now, where we do have our Aboriginal title and rights, recognized in the Canadian Constitution. We have our inherent rights that we continue to exercise on a daily basis as Secwepemc people and as Indigenous people here in so-called BC. And one of them is to use and live in use and occupy our territories. And that's one of the things that, in court precedent, they'll say, well, do you use and do you exclusively use and occupy your territories? But when we do, like this place here in Blue River, where we're exclusively using and occupying our territories by living here on a daily basis, we live and breathe here, and this has become our driveway. This is the Myrtle Lake Road, and this has become our private driveway for the last 4 years as we reclaim back parts of our territory. And we've been living here, and it's been an experience just to get off of our territory, off of our reserve, where there's a lot of protection, I feel, and then going out onto the territory here in so-called Canada, or people want to call it KKK Canada, that it's one of the racist countries in the world, and you may not think it is, but it's where Indigenous people's rights continue to be trampled on a daily basis. Right behind me and right behind this tiny house is now an existing 550-person man camp, and on a daily basis we're dealing with Trans Mountain employees, Crown, because it's owned by the Government of Canada and the Crown. And so I'm going to just flip it around because I want people to see this. This is what I'm walking up to right now. This is our barricade and the red cloth that has been put here, and this is what I see on a daily basis. This is right just meters from our home, and these workers, they come out into the front here every day when there's trucks that come by. They'll stand in a line facing us right here. And there's around 5 workers there all the time. This is Trans Mountain Private Security. And this is Canada. And some of these men have been involved in the violence against our female land defenders here already here at this gate on September 15th of last year. And so this is what we have to deal with every day. And if I was to bring you up on a drone, you'd be able to see actually you'd actually be able to see 120 trailers back there and maybe 100 pickup trucks and everything. So I'm just gonna bring you over there. And this is permits that both the province and the federal government approved, knowing that Secwepemc people live right here and that they would be forcibly removing Indigenous people, Secwepemc people from this area, which is 14 acres, which blocks our Secwepemc Tiny House Warrior Village off from Blue River, the actual waterway that we're actually dependent on. And so you can see over there, those are the men that are constantly there. There's around 4 or 5 unmarked vehicles at the entrance. And here's an old letter that got weathered from 4 years. This has been here for 4 years, and it's a letter that my father had written to Justin Trudeau regarding the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and that we don't give our consent as Secwepemc people for this pipeline. And so it's a copy of the letter that my father had written. My father has passed on since then. And here's, just bring you around a little bit so you can see. But yeah, the tiny houses. We got a yurt to put up, and we're all solar here. It's solar power that we're, thanks to Sacred Earth Solar, we've been able to, you know, sustain ourselves out here in Blue River with our tiny houses during the winter, when like extreme winters, we have over 10 feet of snow here, and just snow removal in itself, just to get our vehicles in and out of our driveway, is a big task. But I'm here to also tell you that this pipeline that's coming from the Alberta tar sands is not just affecting our nation and Secwepemc and Nastalo and down to Tsleil-Waututh and Musqueam and Squamish and the other Coast Salish territories. It's also affecting all of our relatives up and down the Washington, Oregon, and California coast. So the tankers that are a big risk is what we need to address, and people really need to get organized if they really want to see a beautiful coast there on the so-called BC and Washington, Oregon, and California states, because it's not if there will be a tanker spill, it's inevitable. A tanker spill will eventually happen, and the tankers are destined to the Richmond, California oil refineries, and this is you know, a place that has already been affected and been fighting oil refineries, and the oil refineries that are in the Black and Brown communities. And I saw even in 2001 traveling down there, there was people already fighting those Richmond oil refineries. Well, this is bitumen, and Shell and Chevron already applying for permits, and I believe they already got approved permits to change their refineries to bitumen refineries. This is really dangerous. And all of our coastal relatives that still depend on the salmon and the fish and all the seafood for their cultural, spiritual ceremonies, for their livelihood, for their family sustenance through the winters. This is where we need to get organized, because salmon has, you know, fed Indigenous people since for as long as we remember, since we have the stories how the Creator gifted us with salmon, and that it's our responsibility to continue to protect the salmon spawning grounds and the life cycle of the salmon in order for us to continue to have salmon. And the salmon will continue to provide for us as long as we protect the salmon and defend the salmon. And we're going to be doing, embarking on some new building projects south of the Medicine Line down into the so-called US to build a tiny house on wheels that would be a commercial kitchen, a feast house, to be able to bring the people together, to be able to bring the fishermen, the communities that's so dependent on the fish together and the seafood together. And as we know, these potlatches and feast house, and this is where all of the important business took place, and this is crucial for us to get organized now as Indigenous people, that our rights have been trampled on for far too long, and we have rights and they're internationally recognized, and it's for us to assert these rights as Indigenous people, and we will. And so we're going to be reaching out to our fishermen, our relatives along the coast, with all this information and data around the tanker traffic and what that would mean to Indigenous fishing and survival on the coast if we allow tankers to come through. Fighting the insurance companies has been very successful, in that the pressure that all Indigenous resistance, the environmental activism and organizations all around that have been working so hard, to get all these insurance companies educated and for them to agree to stop underwriting, to stop insuring Trans Mountain Pipeline and any tar sands infrastructure projects. And so 18 insurance companies have pulled out, have refused to underwrite Trans Mountain. And this is what we want to see, this movement happening against the tanker traffic along the coast, just because of the amount of devastation it's going to cause. And I'm sure everybody that lives along the coast loves the beach and the water and the animals and the sea life and the orcas and the killer whales so much that will inspire them to stand up to protect the coast against the tankers and insurance, the banks. We could look at all the Indigenous peoples and people from the Niger Delta and the Somalians and different people who've been fighting these tanker traffics in their waters. And we need to be able to study every movement that has ever resisted against these tanker traffic, because, and also even from like one of my teachers, Troy Cochran, who talking about economy and talking about risk, and the risk that just as us as Indigenous people are making to these investments like pipelines, and that there's a book, and I just start reading the beginning of it. It's called Against the Gods. Don't know the author, but it's called Against the Gods, and it talks about the very beginning, the theories of probability, and how these white men made up these ideas of theory of probability, and when they were bringing all the ships over to get the raw resources from North America, they were coming from Europe on these ships, and they were getting raw resources from North America, but some of those ships didn't make it, and they lost all their profit and all their money and all their product. And they came up with this brilliant idea, they said, theory of probability, which was allowed them to analyze risk and then invent insurance. And that's how insurance came to be, which enabled the theft and the resources to be taken from North America and brought to Europe and to the global market, was the use of insurance. But we need to throw that in the garbage, because they're not taking the risk, they're not analyzing the risk properly, and we need to really show them. And that's why INET, Indigenous Network on Economies and Trade, and Tiny House Warriors, who's really Secwepemc women, had our own Indigenous risk assessment brief that we traveled over to Europe to insurance companies and international banks with this risk assessment. And so I'm just gonna make this but you can find that risk assessment on secwepemculuk.org, which is secwepemculekcw.org, and it's where you can find the risk assessment that we traveled to Europe with, and we're going to continue to travel over to these colonizers to really fight for our land. And this is the Crown that we're up against, and the Crown continues to assume that they have jurisdiction over our lands and authority over our lands, but no, that's not true. We continue to remain here on our territories, and so you could see a lot of these industry vehicles like driving in and out right now. This is where I'm at. I'm at the blockade here, at the Tiny House Warrior blockade here in so-called British Columbia, BC, Canada, and pipeline workers are just coming back. This is what I see every day as the invasion and this petrol police state continues to invade our lands. But I'm going to sign off right now and hopefully try to come up with some more live feeds. We're going to be having some musicians come together on August 9th up here. We have a Tiny House Warrior stage. We have built a floor on one of our tiny house trailers with the wheels like this, but just the floor. So we're going to use that for a stage. And so there's going to be some musicians and friends that are going to be joining us here, but encouraging other people to continue to do direct action, to delay construction, that it's not end deal, that it's not too late for Canada to cancel this pipeline, to just cut its losses and just cancel this pipeline. And that's what we're really praying and hoping for and continuing to fight to do. This is not just a pipeline fight, but this is a fight really for our Indigenous land and self-determination. It's always been about land, and we're continuing to fight for our land. So, Books down.